The NFL draft is just 2 days away, and I'm going to give you 5 players that the Bengals should target at pick 17. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Around the Jungle. I'm Evan Stacy, and today I'm going to be diving into my top 5 guys that the Bengals should be drafting at pick 17. But before I dive into all of that, make sure to like this video and subscribe if you are excited for the draft and ready for all the draft content. And to follow us on Instagram and Twitter for all your Bengals news. We'll be updating throughout the draft as it is going on. We will be making sure that you guys are up to date on all of the draft content. But without further ado, let's dive into my top 5. But before, I'm going to give a couple of honorable mentions because there's a lot of guys that I think that the Bengals should target here at 17, a couple that just missed the cut. First being Michael Williams, edge rusher from Georgia. I really like Michael Williams. I think he could fit perfectly alongside Trey Hendrickson. He's an elite run defender and is still working on the pass rush, but he has a very high ceiling. He's only 20 years old, and I think he could be a really good player. 6'5", 265. Another Georgia guy who historically last few years Georgia defenders have panned out pretty well. But last year he was hurt. He had an ankle injury that he played through, but he still looked pretty good. And so you see on tape the potential, the signs that he's going to be a really good player. But I just think with him, with the Bengals need to draft somebody who can make a difference now. And I think Michael might take a year or two to, get to that potential. He is only 20, so he has the time. But I think for the Bengals right now, they need a guy who can come in immediately and make a difference. The second guy that I have as an honorable mention is interior defensive lineman Derek Harmon from Oregon. 6'5", 310, great player. I think he could fill that 3-tech role that the Bengals do need. They brought in TJ Slayton. They re-signed BJ Hill. They have Chris Jenkins, but they don't have that 3-tech pass rusher. And I think Derek Harmon could do that. He's got really long arms. He's just really good tape from Oregon. He's a great player. And so I think he could be a guy that they definitely could target at 17. And he was just missed kind of short on my board. But those would be my 2 honorable mentions. So now let's roll into the top 5, starting with my number 5. I have tackle/guard out of Texas, Kelvin Banks Jr., who is 6'5", 315. He has a 86 PFF grade. I think with the demand that the Bengals have at guard, I think this would be my top target at guard. Move him from tackle to guard, which is where he projects because he has short arms at only 33 and a half, which is shorter than your prototypical tackle. But I think he's a mauler. I think he's a beast, and I think he could be an immediate starter at that guard position for a long time, which is really what the Bengals need. And I think he just is a very good player. I think he would be. He's my best guard / tackle outside of obviously like Membu and Campbell. I think he would be that I think he's at number 3 spot, and I think if he's sitting there at 17, I think the Bengals definitely could take him. Very quick out of his stance. And that helps with being a guard. He's able to pull really well, and he hits defenders at the point of attack. And there's multiple clips and videos of him just taking defensive linemen and just completely taking them out of the play. And yeah, I think he's a great player, and he just has a lot of tools that you'd like in a guard. If he was a tackle, I would be more concerned, but because the Bengals' two tackle sides are set, I think you can move him into guard. I think you'd be a day one starter there and for a long time. And I think he could really help protect Joe Burrow, which is what they really need to do, and they've been trying to do the last few years. But now, as we move out to end, the interior still needs help. Cordell Volson wasn't very good. They released Alex Kappa. Haven't really plugged in that hole at guard. So we've talked about this in previous videos, but I think they kind of might have played their hand with where they might have to go guard early in the first 2 rounds. But I think if Banks is there at 17, I definitely think they would entertain that idea, and I think he could be a really good player for the Bengals. All right, number 4, I have edge rusher James Pierce Jr. I think he's an absolute stud. 6'5", 245. He had 7.5 sacks last year. Um, 10 sacks in 2023. First team All SEC both years. He's your prototypical elite athlete at the edge rush position. He ran a 4.47, which was 99 percentile. He had 1.56 broad jump, which was 94th percentile. He does only have 32 and 3/4 arms, so his arms are a little bit smaller, but 89th percentile in broad jump, excuse me. So he's just an elite athlete at that edge position. If you turn on the tape, you'll see exactly he has an elite first step. He's able to get around tackles extremely fast, and that is what really how he really gets a lot of his production is just being more athletic. He also has good bend and good handwork when tackles get their hands on him. He's able to use multiple pass rush moves to bend around them and kind of get either inside or outside. And he can also defend the run as well. There is multiple times on tape where he would be the backside guy on a read option. He would sit home and he would chase down the quarterback, like guys like Jalen Milroe and some of those SEC quarterbacks. He would chase down him, and he has some good tape against Missouri, against Armand Membu. And last year, or 2023, was his best year. Like I said, 10 sacks. He took a little bit of a step down this past year. He was going to be projected like first overall heading into this year, but took a little bit of a step down. He's not the strongest guy at only 245. He will probably need to bulk up at that edge spot, but I do really like James Pierce. I think he just has some natural athletic abilities and natural pass rushing abilities that, alongside Trey Hendrickson, or even if inevitably Trey Hendrickson is not on the team, I think he could fill in Trey Hendrickson's role as that number one pass rusher. And if he is with Trey Hendrickson, he doesn't have the pressure to be that elite edge rusher. Obviously, we would like him to be that, but he can kind of just play his role secondary to what Trey is. And I think he could be a really good complement to Trey. And we would have 2 elite edge rushers on both sides of the ball, which would be huge because pass rush is a very big need. And without Trey Hendrickson, there's not much there. So we don't know about the Trey Hendrickson, the saga. We don't know about, how that's going to play out, but I think James Pierce could be a really good complement and or successor to Trey Hendrickson if that's the path that they go. All right, my third, I have Walter Nolan, defensive tackle from Ole Miss. Kind of like Derek Harmon, like I said, he's an elite three tech player, very good pass rusher. 6'3", 305, only 21 years old. He's got natural power. He's very strong. He throws off blockers, crushes through double teams. I think he could be a really big impact in that defensive tackle spot. We need, like I said earlier, we need a guy who can just get after the passer at that defensive tackle. Ran a 4.95, which is pretty good for a defensive tackle, 32.5-inch arms. Again, he's like James Pierce. He's just an elite athlete, super explosive, first step, very good at moving laterally, shedding off tackles, and he's able just to move very quicker than a lot of D tackles should. Only a couple of D tackles, guys like Aaron Donald, guys like that, who are like true, like really elite athletes at the defensive tackle spot. Walter Nolan is one of those guys where he is just such a great athlete. He does have smaller arms for interior defense linemen. Usually, like them have about 33. He's at 33 and a half or 32 and a half, but I still think he's a great player, and I've seen him in a lot of mocks around that area. He could even be gone before all of these guys could be gone before the Bengals pick at 17. But I mean, Nolan, 5-star recruit, number 2 player in 22 class of 2022. He started at Texas A&M and transferred to Ole Miss. There's a couple, I think, some character, or not character, but like, I guess because he's moved around a lot, some people question his motive. Um, but I think he's a great player. I think he could be a versatile defensive tackle. He has a high floor, and I think he can help in run and pass defense. And I think he would be a guy that we can plug and play immediately, and he could be a a big help. And that's really what the Bengals should be looking for, is a guy that they can just plug and play in anywhere, really. Primarily on the defense, just because of how bad the defense was. I think you need to get a playmaker who can plug and play immediately and make a difference. And I think Walter Nolan could definitely be a guy to do that. At number 2, I have Mike Green, the edge rusher from Marshall. This guy is the one who has the most college production. He had 17 and a half sacks last year, led the league in sacks. 6'4", 248 from Marshall. He has very good tape. Some people question, oh, it's Marshall, like, not, he doesn't play against elite competition. He played against Ohio State and did really well against them, against guys like Josh Simmons, Donovan Jackson, some guys who will probably be a first round pick at that on that offensive line, and he's just an absolute stud. If you watch the Senior Bowl, he completely dominated, putting Josh Connerly on his back, who is a perennial first-round pick. He ran a 4.57 with a 6.853 cone, and yeah, I think he's just, if you're going for a guy who I believe can come in and make the most impact from a sack perspective and a pass rushing perspective, I think it's Mike Green. With 17 and a half sacks, like I said, he just has a lot of his pass rush repertoire. It's just very deep. He can chop, he can spin. You saw a lot of that in his one-on-ones in the Senior Bowl. He was moving around using different moves to combat what the offensive tackles were doing. He has violent hands. He gets his hands on him and moves around. And again, he's another great athlete at that edge position. He is only 251, so he's again a little bit smaller than what you would probably want, but I think he could be an absolute beast and a guy who can come in again, a guy who can come in immediately and make a difference. And like I said, with James Pierce in a scenario where Trey Hendrickson isn't on the team, he could come in and fill that role. And if Trey is on the team, then he could be a second fiddle to them and kind of put pressure on both sides of the offense. So then you wouldn't have guys, just scheming for Trey. They'd have to scheme for like Pierce or Mike Green. And I think getting another elite pass rusher, we saw what the Eagles have done, having just a great defensive line, great edge rushers. They were able to win the Super Bowl and really just dominate the line of scrimmage the whole time. So I think if the Bengals can take a page out of that book and transfer it here, it's no better draft than this one with how deep the defensive line class is. And I think Mike Green, they've shown a lot of interest in him. He's been mocked to them a lot. And I think he could be an immediate impact and a great, great player there for the Bengals. All right, now my number one, the guy that I want the Bengals to draft the most, is Jahad Campbell, linebacker from Alabama. If you've watched any of our draft videos that we've posted, I've been very adamant that Jahad Campbell is my guy. I think he's just an absolute stud when you talk about playmakers who can come in and make an immediate difference. I think he's the top of the list. He could play linebacker. He played a little bit of edge. He had 5 sacks last year, 119 tackles. He's just, again, such an elite athlete. 4.52 40, 1.153 10-yard, 127 broad. He's got 10.5-inch hands, which is 87th percentile. 32.5-inch arms, which again is smaller for edge rushers, but if he's primarily at the linebacker to edge rush, you can deal with that. I think he's just a Swiss Army knife. He's an all-around guy that I think can be a beast. And with Al Golden's background of being a linebackers coach, I think he would just fall in love with his game. And with the questions we had at linebacker with Jermaine Pratt being on the trade block, and him not necessarily being in the future plans, it seems like. And so I think Campbell can step in, fill that role and more. You can play him at the Mike or Sam in 4-3 schemes or on the edge in 3-4. And I think he just has the mold to be an all-pro player. I think he could be an absolute stud. I think if you just watch the tape, the athleticism immediately pops off. He just attacks on run defense. He's a good blitzer. He's a good pass rusher. He's pretty good in coverage. He just has the whole package. And I think when you talk about getting guys who can make a difference immediately on the defense, I think Jahad Campbell is the guy who I think could make the most impact. And like I said, with Golden's linebacker background, he might be able to even unlock more of what Campbell can do. And being at Alabama, he's played against high competition. He's been coached by Saban and some of the best defensive minds in college football. And so I think he's an absolute stud. If the Bengals walk away in the first round with him, I would be very happy. I think he is a guy who is just going to make an immediate impact, is going to be massive, and would be a difference maker and would completely change the complexion of this defense. And you would feel a lot better going into next year with him and Logan Wilson kind of leading the way. Logan Wilson can be more of your coverage guy, and in certain areas you can bring in Campbell off of blitzes or put him at the traditional edge spot. You can move him around. He's just that good of a player and that athletic. And so I think he would be a home run pick. I think he would just be absolutely amazing. He only missed 5.5. He only had a 5.5 missed tackle rate last year, which counter to Jermaine Pratt, he missed a lot of tackles last year. So just making sure that you're getting a guy who can make tackles, which I know obviously in the defense you want, but a guy who can is just aggressive. And he's played against elite teams. He had great tape against Tennessee and Missouri. And he's only 21 years old, so he's still fairly young. He has room to improve, and I think he could just be an absolute stud if he falls to the Bengals at 17. He does have a shoulder injury, which we'll see how that pans out. I don't know the severity of it, but I'm sure the Bengals have done their due diligence on his medicals, and if it's all good, then I'm running the card in if he's there at pick 17 because I think he would just be an absolute stud. But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for me today. Let me know who you guys think the Bengals should target at 17, and who do you think that they're going to draft? Drafts in 2 days. I'm very excited. Looking forward to seeing kind of how it all plays out and what the Bengals will do. And hopefully they can nail it. And this draft will be a catapult into getting us back into contention. And so I think with a couple of guys that I named here, I think that could be a stepping stone to that goal. And so I'm excited to see what the Bengals do. I'm interested to see what route they go. I love draft season. It's one of my favorite times of the year. So yeah, that's going to wrap it up for me. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.